We know there are many choices in internet radio, and the staff and host of LA Talk Live would like to thank you for choosing the internet's hottest destination for the most eclectic sound and invigorating talk. This is LA Talk Live. We are more than just talk. We know there are many choices in internet radio, and the staff and host of LA Talk Live would like to thank you for choosing the internet's hottest destination for the most eclectic sound and invigorating talk. This is LA Talk Live. We are more than just talk.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Book Beat. I'm Jean Noel-Bassior, and we've got a great show for you today. We have our guest expert is going to be Kathy Guggenauer, and she is a VA who works with authors and speakers and coaches, and she does all those things that you need to do to publicize your business, to help you with that, to help you get speaking gigs, to help your book increase its sales. Some VAs do that, and Kathy is one of them. And then we have Amanda Johnson, and she was our guest expert last week, but here today in studio, she is going to talk about her own book, Upside Down Mommy. So we're going to have her in our, coming up real soon in our first segment. And then we have Donna Jones with us. And Donna has an upcoming book called Take Your Whole Self to Work. And she is all about change, innovation. She's a consciousness coach. And I believe she's worked for the Canadian government, right? She's got some impressive credentials. So she's going to tell you how to take your whole self to work. Is that even possible? We're going to find out. So I want to talk for just a minute about some big news in the book world, and particularly in the self-publishing world, but it has impacted mainstream. Remember Patti Davis? Does that name ring a bell? Ronald Reagan's daughter, who had no problem getting published with mainstream. She's got 8 books out, and she's considered a celebrity. In other words, if she goes to a publisher, they're going to listen, and they did 8 times. And then she wrote a novel that with a lesbian theme, but a novel and different from her other work. It's called Till Human Voices Wake Us. It's her first novel. It's her first work of fiction. And guess what? She could not find a publisher. And she came close, just like so many of you who have perhaps submitted book proposals. This is something I've talked about before because as a coach, I've seen authors struggle and sweat bullets over book proposals, and then they'll get a letter from an agent or an editor that says something like, gee, your project almost made it. It's so good, and we just loved it. I even saw a rejection letter where an agent said, I sat up all night reading this, but it's just not for me right now. And this is a common experience that a lot of people have in the world of mainstream. And finally, it happened to Patti Davis, and she couldn't believe it. So what did she do? She self-published with Amazon, with a Kindle edition, and with CreateSpace. Now, CreateSpace will give her a print edition. And I'm not real high on CreateSpace because I've seen some of the work that's come out of there. It's Amazon's print-on-demand division. So I'm not recommending that you necessarily go with CreateSpace. I've seen 2 pages that came out of there, and each one had, I would say, between 12 and 20 errors on the page. So I'm just not sure what's going on over there, but sometimes it's not very good. What I would suggest, if you do go with CreateSpace, is get a private editor. Work with somebody like our first guest, Amanda Johnson. Work with True to Intention, her company, or come to a book coach like me, and sometimes I do that sort of thing. Or a lot of people you can find, that will give you a good private edit, and then You can go through Create Space and or another like BookBaby, another POD or somebody, or do it yourself. Just you can find a formatter who will post your book. You can just do all that stuff a la carte yourself and save yourself a lot of money sometimes. But what's really interesting is that Patty Davis, who is not a major celebrity, but she's still considered a celebrity, and she actually self-published, and it's going to be really interesting to follow this and see how her book does. And that's her attitude too. That's what she's saying. She's saying that she says, getting publishers to say yes is really hard. That's the first time that's ever happened to her. And so she says, so I've dipped my toe into self-publishing, and she made the round of the publishing houses, and she garnered a lot of interest. That is, she came really close, but no offers. So this is really significant for the publishing world, and it's going to be really interesting to track. It just shows that self-publishing is here to stay, and sometimes it's becoming really the best option. And I'm saying this as a mainstream girl. I am late to the party here, but I'm telling you, this is what's happening, and you can do it yourself. So, do we have Kathy on the line? Okay, she's not on the line yet. So, let's talk about, we're trying to get her right. Let's talk about one of the self-publishing houses, Balboa Press, which is linked with Hay House. And there was some interesting little flurry with Balboa Press this week also. In fact, there were over 150 complaints on LinkedIn, in one of the authors groups of LinkedIn, because people sometimes go with Balboa Press thinking that because it's affiliated with Hay House, that somehow, and this is implied by some of Balboa's publicity, somehow their book is going to end up as a Hay House release. And that's not generally true. Balboa Press is a POD. In other words, it's a print-on-demand division of Hay House. But what Hay House does, now Hay House is a traditional publisher, published a lot of great stuff, run by Louise Hay, started by her. Wonderful woman, very credible, just inspiring spirit. But Hay House has done what a lot of publishers are doing these days. They're setting up a private print-on-demand division that you pay for. So what happens is Hay House runs these contests. Actually, they kind of let Balboa Press run the contest. And they get you to send in your manuscript, and they say that they're all read and considered as possibilities for Hay House. But in fact, it's something like 1 in 1,000 or maybe 1 in 5,000 gets chosen. So it very rarely happens that you ever end up at Hay House, which is a publisher that you don't pay for just because you went with Balboa. In other words, you don't get discovered through Balboa very often. So a lot of people, that's a shock to them. And that was the nature of some of the comments in the LinkedIn group this week. Balboa just ran one of these contests, and guess what? Most of these people, in fact, like 999 out of 1,000, and maybe even more than that, are not going to end up with Hay House. And yet there's this feeling that you might. So be careful. Be careful. Print on demand means just what it says. You're going to end up paying. And there's different packages, and I would say to look at them very carefully. A lot of the stuff, especially the editing, I'd have second thoughts about, because you have to figure you get what you pay for. And a lot of times, the people who are working at the PODs, a lot of times there's some great people there, I know that, but a lot of times it's not the same as getting a private editor on your own. So I'm waiting to see if Kathy's on the line, or do we have her yet? Is she here? I can't hear her? Yeah. So we are probably going to be going earlier to our guest, Amanda, our first guest, because and if Kathy shows up, then we will put her in another segment. Yeah, Kathy will be on eventually, and you should know that what Kathy does is help you do all the things that authors have to do and speakers have to do, and she works with coaches, authors, speakers, and she can really do all those things that can help you spread the word about your business. So the important thing is that VAs, that kind of VA that Kathy is not just someone who handles administrative work. Those VAs do an awful lot more for you. So in a minute, we're going to be bringing on our first guest, Amanda Johnson, and she is going to tell us all about what inspired her to write her book, Upside Down Mommy. So stay tuned. This is the Book Beat. I'm Jean Noel-Bassior. This is LA Talk Live, where we're more than just talk.
This is Brett Chapin.
And this is Dorothy Dillingham Blue, inviting you to join us every Saturday at noon Pacific Standard Time for our show, La La Land Talk.
Join us as we talk with some of the top talent in LA. Artists' untold stories, your phone calls, and live on-location broadcasts have made La La Land one of the best sources in LA for everything entertainment.
So don't forget to tune in to La La Land Talk.
Exclusively on latalklive.com.
You can also catch us on iTunes Radio R&B, Live 365, Radio Flag, and now Stitcher Radio. Or watch and listen directly at latalklive.com.
Saturdays at noon Pacific Time. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/LaLaLandTalk, Twitter, twitter.com/LaLaLandTalk. Reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live.
And we are more than just talk. I think we've got a Shakespeare monologue or two we could do. Yeah.
Jazz hands.
Kickball change.
Good
That's
stuff.
what I'm saying. Mm-hmm.
I'll do some Pippin.
Ooh, yeah. Some miming. I'm in a box. I'm in a box. I'm in a box.
Welcome back to the Book Beat, and we are here with Amanda Johnson, who is a transformational speaker, best-selling author, and message coach. And this is really interesting because we had Amanda on last week by phone, and we were talking with her about her coaching for writers. And one of the things that I've always been interested in is when you teach, do you actually do the thing that you teach? And Amanda has finally found her calling with her book that she wrote, and it was about parenting. And after coaching so many people to write their books, and then all of a sudden your book emerged, right? How did you get to that point where you got clear on what your message was to the world?
Well, actually, I had been clear about 6 years before, and I shared a little bit of the story last week. But what had happened was I'd had a friend who had asked me to read her book, and I knew that it was one of those books that was just going to change the world. And what she didn't know about me at the time was that while I was doing very well as her master writing instructor in her company, I wasn't doing very well in any other area of my life.
Funny how that happens.
Yeah, the smile worked.
Mhm.
You know,
Right.
it was a little bit of a lie. So one day she asked me, "So what is the value that you have to give to the world?" And I shrunk because I really didn't feel like I had any value. And so, like I shared last week, I got in my car, cried halfway home, asking myself that question: what do I have to give to the world?
Mm.
And what I came up with was, the one thing I'm doing mostly well is parenting.
Mm.
And I'd been using the law of attraction with my son without knowing what it was, but I had just figured it out because the law of attraction, that the movie The Secret, had just come out.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, maybe I could write a book for parents, like a how-to. This is how I did it. Because at the ripe age of 2.5 years old, he looked at someone who called him a bad boy and said, "I'm not a bad boy. I just made a bad choice."
Right. Was that the moment you say you had a moment where you felt that you had actually crushed your son's soul? What
No,
happened?
that was a different moment.
Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. That was a hard moment. So I had gotten clear 6 years ago. And what happened was that I attracted a secret teacher into my life, one of the teachers from that movie.
Mm-hmm.
And when I walked into her workshop, I had to come face to face with that moment that you're talking about. Because I had done so many things well with my son. The messages that I had been giving him were so powerful that he was able to stand up for himself at 2.5 years old and break a legacy. And there had also been this other thing going on, which was I was very unhealthy emotionally. I had been limited as a child and a young adult and a young person. And because of all of the frustration, the pain, the shame of not feeling like I was ever going to be able to provide for him, not feeling like I could ever give him enough, feeling tired, just no energy physically, I was almost crippled because of the emotional stuff going on.
So you sort of felt like your life was kind of falling apart or not working?
It
at
wasn't
that
working
point?
anywhere.
And yet here you had this son to raise, and you wanted to you didn't want it to spill over onto him.
Right. I didn't want him to turn out like me.
Right.
So I gave him all of the empowering messages. But what I couldn't give him was a model.
Interesting. And children pick that up, of course.
Oh, yeah. They follow a model much faster than the message. You know,
Right.
they're the first ones to say, well, you don't do that.
Yeah, because words don't teach.
No, they don't. They're really good. They're really, really, as you know, words are really powerful. Most of our wounds come from people using words inappropriately.
Right, but action is
unconsciously.
the bottom line.
But action is so much more powerful. And so,
Right.
so what had happened was about that time, I don't know, like I said, it's all fuzzy back in that dark time, but he must have been about 18 months old, and we were shopping at a Kohl's, I think it was. And I was on such a tight budget. You know, I'm sitting at that clearance rack. I'm trying to find some clothes for him because he's growing like a weed. And I just remember the frustration building in me. Like, why can't I just pay for some freaking clothes? You know, it was just this.
Especially at Kohl's.
At
with
Kohl's. and
Sale
it was-
at Kohl's. I mean,
Exactly.
can't
that
go.
stupid rack, you know, you should be able to get a lot
Right.
of. And it just felt hard, and I was tired, and I didn't feel good. And so we get up to the register, and I finally figured it out. We get up to the register, and he sees this little puppy at the register, and he says, "I want Dad." And I said, I didn't plan on getting that for you today, maybe the next trip. But what had happened was all my anger at my situation, all of my shame over not being able to just buy him a stupid $5 dog, you know, all of that came up. And so because he hadn't had a nap, he started crying. And I kept trying to, give him cookies, distract him, just something to get through the store. And he wouldn't have it. It escalated to the point where I literally, it's almost like I lost my mind. It was like a blackout moment. When I was trying to write through that story, I was missing large segments of it because it was me, but it wasn't me. I don't remember.
You didn't want to
actually
go
being there.
back, and it was too painful, right?
Yeah, and I think that something else took over. It was like that other part of me that had been so wounded
I see.
just kind of took over. And so I dragged him out to the car, and I spanked him way too hard in the back of my car until we made eye contact. And I realized that he didn't recognize me anymore.
Oh, wow.
And so then I stopped and
So it was that look that he gave you where you saw he wasn't recognizing you?
yeah, he didn't know. It was like he was looking at a monster, not his mom.
Wow.
And I just broke and just fell in a heap across his, and then he broke my heart even more because instead of pushing me off, he stroked my hair and said, "It's okay, Mommy." And I
Wow.
thought,
So he became the teacher at that moment, huh?
yeah, and that's part of the message of this book is he'd been my teacher from the beginning because I knew I was broken when he got here, and I could look at him and see that he wasn't. And he didn't have a problem asking for what he needed. You know, he cried until he got fed. He asked for it until he got it. He expressed his anger and his sadness, and he did it all appropriately. And I thought, you know, there would be times where he'd be kicking and screaming on the floor, and I'd think, what does he need right now? Because right now I'm all, you know, frustrated. I want him to stop, and because it's all my stuff, but what does he need? And I thought maybe he just needs to kick and pound the floor.
See, that's amazing because it seems like most parents would think of punishment, like I don't want him to be screaming and kicking and pounding the floor. But how was it that you were able to acknowledge that he was doing it right? That's what I find so amazing in this. Because most parents assume the kid's doing it wrong and that, you know, we know how to do it right, but they're doing it wrong.
I think that I was so hungry for the space that he had. I wanted to protect that expression because it hadn't been allowed
in your life.
In my life. You know, I was furious, but I didn't know how to express it in a way that didn't make people walk away from me, either scared or angry. And I was sad, but I didn't know how to express it in a way that didn't make everyone else around me sad.
If you conveyed that message, you mean? Because people got threatened when you tried to speak that message?
Because I'd bottled it up for so long. When I finally, you know, let it out, I really let it out.
I see.
I burned a lot of bridges in my young adulthood because I realized that there had been some things that had been said and modeled that were not healthy. And I lashed out because I didn't know what else to do.
So you didn't want your son to grow up like this, right? So you had, I hate to use the aha moment thing, but this sounds like you had a couple of those moments.
Yes.
And then somehow you say that law of attraction entered into all of this. How does that fit in?
You know, it was interesting. It was, looking back, I can see that it was all divinely orchestrated. You know, all of those pieces fell into place when they were supposed to. People entered my life at just the right time, because if they'd entered 6 months earlier, I wouldn't have been open. But I was so desperate for change, and I had been helping some people edit their books and do those types of things, and someone crossed my path, and I think you've had her on the show before, Ursula Mentjes. A sales coach, and her first book was called Selling with Intention, and that came across my desk, and she needed help with a workbook. And I remember reading that book and thinking, this isn't about sales at all. I was just weeping because it was really about reconnecting with that part of ourselves that can co-create. And so she kind of, her book actually brought that back because I had known about that in the past, and it was like I had forgotten it because I was in so much pain. And so I started, you know, talking to her about it, and then The Secret came out and she told me about that movie, and so we rented it. And then shortly afterwards, my mentor had asked me, what value do you have to give to the world? And it just all kind of came together at the right time.
Right. And law of attraction being, it's all vibrational, right? That it's our frequency and our vibration, and that is what, through our thoughts, might attract certain people, circumstances, events into our life, that we're kind of putting out that signal to the universe, and the cooperative components are kind of coming towards us, right? So, and it's hard to apply this to parenting sometimes. I mean, people don't associate the two, right? Hold up your book for a moment. Let's see your book.
It's stuck.
And hold it up so we can see it. Upside Down Mommy, right? So does the book help parents kind of, through your journey, kind of be able to apply some of these things themselves?
Yeah, because, you know, when I had outlined the book before, 6 years ago, it was all a list of how-tos. This is what to say, this is what not to say, this is why, this is how how you damaged your child, this is how to repair it. I mean, it was not an easy, it was going to be a very fast read, but not a very effective read. And so when I stepped into that workshop with the secret teacher and sat in the back of her room and started to come face to face with the real stories. Now, I had done a lot right, but I had also gotten some things wrong. And I needed to really heal my own life before I could make it possible for my son to do something bigger or better than where I was at the time. So, I started doing that work.
The work that you teach, actually, because I know you've been constantly helping people go deeper, right?
Yep.
Find the message, because I've worked with some of your clients, and I know what fantastic work you've done. But it sounds like first, and this often happens, we think we both know about clients, it's like, oh, I'm going to write a how-to book. And then that doesn't quite feel that it's the whole thing. I always say the book speaks to you. The book has its own awareness, its own consciousness.
Yeah.
So it sounds like, did you want to personalize it more? Did you want to put more of yourself into it than just like a how-to book? Or what was going on for you?
Well, you know what I realized? As I was writing these things down, they seemed way too common sense. Like, of course you shouldn't say that to your child.
Everybody knows this.
Duh. But why do we do it? And so for me to share my story about how I had been limited and how that had affected my parenting, and to start out with that parking lot story, that horrific story, for me, it was about going beyond these are the steps to, this is a real journey that I took with my son. I didn't want it to be about, I'm the expert, because I didn't want to position myself as a parenting expert. That wasn't my purpose. I wanted to come from a space of, I know you're trying to get it all right, and here's the deeper conversation. This is what's really going on when you're having a power struggle. It's probably not about the child.
Is it about you?
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm guessing from the title, and I may be wrong, but Upside Down Mommy, that you kind of have turned parenting upside down, so it's kind of standing on its head, and your son is kind of teaching you. Is that
Yes.
Is that it?
Yeah, we're a team. He learns from me because I've been here longer. And I learn from him because he hasn't been here as long. And he teaches me, he reminds me to play. He reminds me to dream bigger. And the reason why I use the upside down is this, my friend Caterpillar that I bring everywhere with me. And we had this.
Do you want to hold him up for the camera?
Yeah.
What's his name?
He's a love bug. His
Okay.
name is Love Bug. But we had this most amazing experience in our, we'd found one of those butterfly gardens, those insect lore puts out these butterfly gardens. You can get the larva and watch the larva go from what I call the magic egg into all the way through the transformational process. And it is such a beautiful process to watch. And what I realized as I was watching it was that that's how I was approaching him. And there was something about the fact that I wasn't wanting to damage the process that was already happening. It was like I was witnessing the most beautiful growth process ever. Why would I want to get in there and mess it up? Because that's what I was really afraid of doing, was messing it up.
Right. But when you're in this, like, we've all been in the supermarket, and you know where I'm going with this, right?
I do.
Oh my God. And what do we see?
Yes.
We see a parent slapping their child, the child screaming, or
Dropping F-bombs on them in the middle of the store.
Yeah. Yesterday I was over at Griffith Park going for a run, and this parent pulled up, and they had obviously, like, they were going to take their kid to the park, supposed to be like a great experience for the parent. Kid was wailing, didn't want to be there, didn't want to be in the park.
Yep.
And, and we've all seen then the parent starts disciplining them, and what do you feel? What do you do when you see that? I mean,
I always tell people I do most of my self-work in Target. I do. Like, Amanda, where do you get all your self-work done? In Target. Because if you are present enough to all the voices and what's being said to the children, it's enough to drive you crazy.
Right.
I heard one lady say, you better hang on to this cart, because if you get off of this cart, someone is going to drag you away and kill you before I can find you. Now that's an extreme thing to say to a child.
Yeah.
And you think, how is that little girl going to continue through her life.
Well, they're taking it literally.
They do.
They're going like carts can kill me, right? Or stores are dangerous, or right?
Leaving my mom.
Mm-hmm.
If I leave my mom, something's going to happen. So what happens when they turn 18 and it's time to leave home? Like
Right.
you've encoded something in them that is not going to serve them.
Right, it's encoding, and it may be the first time they've ever put that together, so it's very powerful, right?
Yep. And then all they have to do is sit in front of the news and hear about a little girl who got taken away.
Right.
And it just keeps creating that story. And so then they recreate it themselves.
Yeah,
And
law of
someday-
attraction comes in. You're in that
right.
vibration, and yeah. So you say, though, that it's possible to raise a child with no limits. What do you mean by that?
No limits. Think about all the limits that were put on us around money, around dreaming about what's possible. Oh, that's just a big dream. You know, maybe someday after you go to work and get a real job, you know, maybe you'll be able to do what you want to do.
About money, about career, about
Every part of life,
everything,
about
yeah.
relationships, you know, love is a battlefield. Like, you know, what are the things that we're hearing all the time that create our experience? And so for me, it was about really trying to figure out how do I still communicate to him the importance of being aware of what is in his environment, that he needs to be cautious, careful, and all that, but not implant fear that doesn't need to be there.
how do you do that? That's a real challenge, isn't it?
It is a challenge. But, you know, for me, I always bring it back to, what does the child need right now? The child needs to understand that some rules are there to keep you safe. Because there are things that maybe you don't understand right now, and in 5 years when you get it, you'll be able to do it differently. But then you're leaving that possibility open. This isn't how this is always going to be. It's just, this is what you understand now. And so here's what I would like for you to do. This will help you stay happy and healthy.
So are you kind of making it clear that it's not like you're saying this is always true, but
Right.
this is maybe true for this situation, this moment, and
Yes.
you can kind of prevent that programming that is always like that.
Exactly.
Is that sort of, so is that one of the kind of, I don't want to say tips because, you know, self-help language,
Yeah, I
right?
know.
But is that one of the things you discuss in your book, like
Yeah.
how to do that?
Yeah, one of the main things, I think the biggest limit that I see is having our worth tied to our behavior. So you only hear good when the child has done something well or achieved something, instead of right before they go to sleep, and it's not because of anything that they've done. They're just laying there and you say, "You are such a good boy." They cannot attach that to anything else in that moment, because you're just looking in their eyes and acknowledging that beautiful part of them that is good. And I really believe law of attraction says this, and all of the other universal principles. If you pay attention to that part of them and give energy there, that's the part that continues to show up, because they love being nurtured.
And they know it. They know they're good, right? That's what your son said to you,
Yeah.
right? And I'm kind of a student of Abraham Hicks, and one of the things he says about parenting is that a lot of the times when we were told we were bad, it was just because we failed to please somebody.
Yep.
It wasn't that we really did something bad. It was just that we pissed somody off.
Yeah. You're a big
Usually-
inconvenience. That
Right.
drives me crazy.
Did you hear that?
Yeah, it's not hearing, it's being treated like an inconvenience, right? It's not, you're an inconvenience, because a child doesn't get that, but it's, you know, hurry up, I'm trying to get this done.
I see. Yeah.
You know, like, go
Yeah.
away, you're
Like we're
bothering
constantly
me.
doing something wrong just, you know, by being.
Yeah,
right?
they're just being
Yeah.
themselves.
Yeah.
Curious, playful, adventurous,
Yeah.
risk takers, like all of those things that we grew up and we wish we could have more of.
Right.
We turn around and squish those things in our kids, because we're just simply not thinking about, if they really truly took this as their core belief through their lives, what will that look like in 18 years? What will that look like in 20 years? What will that, you know? If we thought in those terms, we would be a little bit more careful with our
So this
words.
sounds like really conscious parenting.
Yes, very conscious.
Right. It's amazing because you're actually respecting the beingness of that other person that has come to be with you. You have actual techniques in the book, like wing training, right? Trusting the wind. I love the names. Butterfly impact.
Yeah, and that's all related to that process that we watched the caterpillar go through to become the butterfly. And so Magic Egg is about acknowledging that part of the child that is good, that it comes with so much perfection, comes with value and their particular set of gifts and skills that they're bringing to the world. And then the caterpillar craze is about that phase, that crazy energy phase. You know how they always say terrible twos, terrible threes? To me, that's the time when their real self starts to show up and individuate a little bit. And that's our time when they start to reflect back to us the other parts of ourselves that we don't like so much. When they're babies, we like to be with them because they remind us of everything that's good. And then when they start to say I and no, it triggers all of our stuff. So they become our little mirrors. And upside down is what happens right after that. Because a child will go through a growth phase, a developmental phase, and they'll achieve or they'll accomplish something in one part of themselves, and the other part is trying to catch up. So maybe they had a big leap cognitively, and they can do math all of a sudden, but emotionally, they're still trying to keep everything moving at the same rate. And so there's this time where they act a little bit crazy. And, do you not feel well? No. Did something happen? No. They're just going through something. And if we try to make them label it, we do them a disservice instead of just allowing them to be in that and go through it quickly.
Or if we try to make them be together when they're just not feeling together. And then I think one of the amazing messages that you gave your son, by the way, what's your son's name?
Aaron.
Was you're good. I mean, how many times during our childhood did somebody tell us what a good person we were? For many of us, that didn't happen a lot. And even if I think the parents were okay, and fine, even loving parents, but sometimes we forget to just tell kids really basic, important messages like that, right?
Yeah.
So
we make way too many assumptions.
Yeah.
And the kids need to hear it and feel it.
Right. Otherwise, you feel like you're flawed. A lot of kids, get that feeling there's something wrong with me right out of the box, right from the beginning. It's almost like original sin in a way. What did I do?
That was exactly what I was dealing with growing up, was this feeling that this message that had been, there's something wrong with you. You're broken in some way. You can't fix it on your own. And so what am I left with, really?
Right.
Just brokenness and no ability to kind of make it better at all.
Right.
And then I'm supposed to help raise a child? This is
an amazing book for parents who can turn things around. Hold your book up again and tell us, where can we get it?
It's on Amazon.
Okay, that's the best place?
It's the best place to get it.
And tell us about your website again. If you need coaching, people, this is this is the place to go.
Yeah, thank you.
She will drag the book out of you in a loving way.
We do. We lovingly drag those things out. When all of my authors say, I just wanted to write a book. And I said, no, you didn't. You really wanted to change your life. And that's what we're doing. So the website is True to Intention, and that's TrueIntention.com.
Okay, so that's how you contact Amanda Johnson. Thank you so much for being here with us. So we're going to go to break now, but don't go anywhere, because we have Donna Jones coming up, and she has a book called Take Your Whole Self to Work. It's not out yet, but it will be, and she's going to tell us, how can you do that? How can you take your whole self to work? Is that even possible? That's my question.
I can't wait to read that book.
I know. This is like just as amazing as raising a whole child, right?
Yeah.
So stay tuned. This is the Book Beat with me, Jean Noel-Bassior, here on LA Talk Live, where we're more than just talk.
Are you ready to enjoy the Maui lifestyle? You can have it all by owning real estate on the paradise island of Maui. Dennis Rush, a 22-year Maui resident and real estate broker, brings his wealth of experience and market knowledge to add value to your Maui real estate understanding, providing a level of service as unique and exceptional as the island of Maui itself. The magical island of Maui was voted the most exclusive resort island in the world by Condé Nast Traveler, and keep in mind, Maui is only a simple, non-stop flight away. Hawaii Business Magazine Top 100 Realtors awarded Dennis Rush the 2011 fourth top realtor on the island of Maui. Go to www.dennisrush.com to view all of the amazing properties currently available in the Maui MLS system. Whatever your needs or desires, Dennis Rush will provide a private consultation for any Maui properties your heart desires. You will be in good hands. Once again, go to www.dennisrush.com. That's www.dennisrush.com. Contact Dennis today to start your Maui lifestyle now. Dennis Rush, proud sponsors of the Dawn Christie Show and LA Talk Live.
Okra Group Personal Chefs, proud sponsors of Let's Do Lunch with Chef Richard Petty. Okra Group Personal Chefs have been providing quality gourmet culinary services to distinctive homes since 2004. For a free evaluation of dietary needs, call 818-850-9584. That's 818-850-9584. We will design a custom menu that fits your needs. So call us today, Okra Group Personal Chefs. Let us personally make you a dish.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the Book Beat. I'm Jean Noel-Bassior, and my guest this segment is Donna Jones, and she has a very interesting background. You work for the Canadian government, right?
Well, for a period of time, only
Period of
about 6 years, but about 25 years of my profession has been professionally facilitating groups, teams, projects, large-scale projects, construction, arts, you name it, every sector.
So you've really been sort of in the workplace, the corporate, the government workplace, right? And so you decided to write a book called Take Your Whole Self to Work. Now, why? Was that from being in that world and seeing that people were kind of fragmented and weren't able to really be who they were? Is that what?
Definitely, that's part of it. There's no question that's part of the formula. But also just the observation was that people were burning out of corporate left, right, and center. And why? Well, because they were just fried at a heart level. They're just they couldn't do it anymore. And I was meeting them in every sector, healthcare sector. It was nurses. You know, in every different sector, there was a different combination of factors, but the same result. People were just leaving. So in my own work, when I watched it, it had to do with people not being able to take all their talent to work. The assumption was, well, we take our heads, but we don't take the rest of us. So, and we only use one half of the brain. We don't use the other half of the brain either. So you just see enough of that, and you go, wow, we're missing opportunity here in a huge way.
That's so debilitating, isn't it, for people?
Yeah.
So you were seeing like a fair amount of burned out people. Right?
Well, that and I think the joke is that companies are creating their own stress-related costs, and I think in the United States it's something like $300 billion in stress-related illness.
$300 billion?
It's huge.
Just for stress?
Yes, it's huge.
Wow.
And I mean, they're making it. They're creating it all by themselves without any help. So it's just, that doesn't make sense to me.
So you started thinking about this, right? And going like, there's got to be a better way?
Oh, absolutely. You know, and it's not that hard. You've got talent in the companies, just turn it loose. So
how do you do that? Like, you have a book that, how can we take our whole self to the workplace and not feel like they're going to chop our head off? I mean, can we really do that?
I think it's definitely possible. It's a dance between the company culture, between what's going on in the world, the global environment, you know, the working environment, the company itself, its philosophy, its beliefs, what it believes in, which sits in the culture, but the values, what's important to it, and its purpose. Why does this company exist in the first place? And then after that, it attracts employees that either fit, you know, preferably fit that particular set of core values. So when you ask me, you know, can we do it? I walk into a Patagonia store in LA some time ago, and I'm chatting with the customer service rep. And I said, what's it like working for Patagonia? And she says, it's the first company I've been able to take my whole self to work.
Really?
I've been able to take
Wow.
what I care about. I've been able to take who I am. I don't have to leave my soul at home. That was how she saw it.
Wow.
And she's not alone, you know. So that's a semi-private company, but there are private companies and a lot of startups right now, a lot of social enterprises. All of them take their whole selves to work because they're powering a change that they can see. You know, they can see a completely different future and a different role for business, and they're driving it. So we've got lots of opportunity in the rest of business that's watching. Well, actually, they're not paying attention at all, and that's part of the problem.
So that's kind of part of your mission, right? Is to get them to pay attention.
Yeah.
And is it to get these companies to see that if they will allow their employees to express themselves more, they're going to benefit, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. The assumption has been made that if we control creativity, or if we control it goes back a long ways. And again, the belief that sits in the culture has something to do that you need to tell the employees what to do because they don't know how to do it on their own.
Right.
And that belief has never been reviewed. So basically the idea is that we'll just keep running on that belief because we don't even notice we've got it. So the idea behind it is to merge who you are as a person, your own beliefs, and with what goes on in the company, and upgrade the skills so you can start seeing those invisible patterns that run underneath and change things dramatically.
So merge your beliefs with sort of the company's goals. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, what it boils down to, and this is the fascinating thing I found when I was doing my work, is that, you know, because it's like a lab of human dynamics where everywhere you go you start seeing patterns. I also noticed in my informal coaching that I was doing that the patterns that people were going through in their lives, and some of them were pretty addictive, were the same patterns I was seeing in teams that were stuck or teams that were not, moving forward, rolling back.
Well, that makes sense. If people are going through their own stuff, they're going to bring it to the team, and the team's probably going to magnify it, right?
Absolutely. That's exactly what was going on.
Wow.
And then I'd also watch them move forward and organizationally. And then you'd watch this fear kick in. It's like, oh my God, and they'd pull the whole thing back. So they were creating their own stuck place, shall we say. And you just thought, well, if with a lot more awareness, they don't have to do that.
So this is kind of what the book is going to. Now, is the book going to be for companies or for individuals or for workers or for both? Or
well, it's for business professionals who understand that they have a purpose for being. They have a reason to exist, in the world, and they care about what they do, and they want to be able to contribute to a company that equally cares about something. So it's a real shift in perspective, I think, for companies in terms of being clear about their purpose. But we've got companies worldwide who understand this, and they're very good. They far outperform their peers. There's just very few people know about them. So
are they names we would recognize, or?
Novo Nordisk would be one. There's Southwest Airlines is another. There's.
Yeah, we love Southwest.
Exactly.
And I heard that, like at Trader Joe's, I've actually heard that the cashiers are actually encouraged to make conversation with you, and be friendly and ask. It's not about efficiency and moving people through really, really fast, although they do that. But I think that's a company that is pretty good with that.
It's a great example because what they exude is trust.
Yeah.
And they exude humanity.
They do.
And that's what we need right now. So.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and now you've interviewed a lot of people for this book, right?
Yeah, that's very much so. Last 4 years I've been running a podcast off of management issues, and the people that have stepped up to be interviewed have been. I have to say I'm very humbled by
You've got some really heavy people. Like, did you have Bruce Lipton? And
Bruce started it, actually, when I said to him, look, how does biology of the human apply? Because I was seeing this in my work, and I thought, well, he's a biologist. Maybe he can tell me. So I went to him in 2005 and said, Bruce, how does this work in organizations? He says, absolutely exactly the way you're seeing it. So he did an interview with me, and that's for free off the website.
Yeah,
you
he wrote
the
Biology of Belief, right?
That's
and
right.
He's kind of known as pretty heavyweight in the scientific world, and also crossover with consciousness. And so tell us more about what do you think? What's your dream for this book? What's it going to accomplish?
What I'd love to see it do is to help both companies and the people working in these companies see the big picture. And when I don't mean the 40,000 foot version. I brought actually the big picture with me.
The 40,000 foot.
Yeah, this is the big picture.
Okay.
Okay.
That's the
So
40,000.
it's the much larger picture.
Okay.
And
So we don't have to go there, or we do?
on a spaceship, well, we could talk to Virgin Air about that, but but it's seeing the big picture and their place in it. It's going to have there's a lot. It's loaded with insights, obviously, because most of what drives performance is invisible. And my whole role is about seeing what's underneath the surface. So when you start paying attention to that, you can really accelerate change quite quickly. So, and there'll be tips and tools for leaders as well.
For leaders. So if I'm like a team leader and I pick up this book, what's it going to help me do?
Well, the biggest task we have in front of us right now, I think, is building empathy. It's being able to really hear what the other person is saying.
Empathy in the workplace?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I know. It's what a
what
concept.
A concept, yeah. Exactly.
Totally. But that is the task. And so for that kind of individual, for the team leader, it's not about what you do anymore. It's about who you are. And leaders exist on absolutely every level. They have to for the company to be agile.
Now, are you saying that part of this evolution in business consciousness, because that's just sounded pretty huge what you just said, because in business it's always kind of been about you are what you do, kind of, right?
Yep.
And you're saying that, are they coming to an awareness in the corporate world that it's also who you are plus what you do? Is that what you're saying?
I think it's of course, yes, they are, and then there are some that just aren't. So there's the ones that are on the front end edge of the wave are definitely much more aware. The conscious ones. Yeah, and so these are managers who support performance. They don't try to control it, and managers who've really learned how to get themselves out of the way. And get rid of barriers to people working together. So those are the places that you're going to see it show up. But also there's a pretty big push just in terms of talent, because talent can leave when it doesn't work. And they have that option, and they use it.
And we're more mobile than ever, right? So
you bet. So if a company is not offering growth opportunities, not just growth opportunities in terms of the career, but growth in terms of who you are, the whole expansion of, like, what else am I capable of? That kind of question, which we've all asked ourselves at some point or another, then they'll leave.
So is there...
Or shut down, which is...
Right. So is there kind of an evolution of consciousness going on where they're starting to realize that, and so... Now they kind of have to be on their good behavior, or they have to recognize the whole self of their employees more. Is that what's kind of going on?
Yeah, for sure. I think it boils down to courage. You have to have the courage to ask the tough questions, have the difficult conversations, look in the mirror, reflect, and learn.
You mean the team leaders or the managers?
Every level. Yeah.
So in other words, it's about everybody communicating more of their. It's sort of about everybody bringing their whole self to work.
Absolutely.
The managers, the executives, not just the bottom of the rung.
Well, we've always assumed leaders are the ones that lead. They're at the front of the pack. But in reality,
they already bring more of their whole self, right?
Well, some do, some don't. It depends on how they define themselves.
True.
If they define themselves based on I'm a leader because I know everything there is to know, but I'm an expert, No, a leader right now is someone who can learn, and reflect and work with others effectively. So it's a leader at every level. We all lead our lives, that's the reality. So tomorrow you lose your job, or all your money evaporates in the stock market or something like that, and you're left with the question, what do I do now? Well, you can throw on the value judgment that says, "Ooh, that's bad," or that's a good thing if that's something you were hoping for, but which is unlikely. But the point
is attraction at work.
Yeah. But when you pull out the value judgment, the emotional reaction of good or bad, you've got opportunity. How do I work with this? What else can I possibly do I haven't done before?
So in this vision of yours of a perfect world, where let's say they were all following your book, what would that look like?
I think it just works. It basically looks like people innovating in a very inspired way. You just watch Gen Y. They've got a very astute perception of what needs to be done in the world, And we have lots of global issues that we can tackle, and we can tackle them better together than we can alone. So what I foresee is a real surge of innovation that is powered by people who are bringing their creativity to work, and they're allowed to contribute. It's got meaning for them. There's support for them to do it, and that support is throughout the company and the networks, across the networks that those companies are entangled with worldwide.
So are you feeling like hopeful about this?
Very much so.
When your book comes out, when do you expect it'll be out?
To be honest, I have no idea. I've written the overview. It's at Waterside Agency now. We'll see what happens next.
You've been tackling the difficult part of the book proposal, right?
Do
you want to talk a little bit about that? What was that like?
Well, I'm not. I've written several book proposals actually, and it's been fascinating every time you do it, because when you do it, you discover. First of all, it's quite helpful it's a big business plan for your book.
It focuses you, right?
Yeah, it truly does. And which is hard for me, because I find it much easier to write stream of consciousness and then to go back and say, well, how do I structure that now?
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know.
Book proposals are not the most fun thing in the world to write.
No, I have to really gear up for it.
But like you say, it's a win-win for the author and for the agent. And you're trying to go mainstream, right?
Yeah, I am sort of exploring that right now, a whole lot, because I want the reach to be really, really high. And so, obviously I'll facilitate any part of that I need to. That's obvious. But I really feel that might be the way to go initially.
And you went to a conference. You actually did some really good homework. You went to a conference. You met some agents, right, at the conference?
Yeah, I actually started this in 2003. I wrote an ebook, and I took it to Book Expo America, and then I ran out of energy to market it. And so this last conference I was at that you're referring to was Authors 101 with Rick Frischman, and Tom Antian comped me in, which was brilliant.
Yeah, he's great.
He's awesome. I mean, I love Tom. He's real.
Yeah.
And so, yes, that's where I really had a chance to meet with the agents, learn from so many people on what to take into account and how to work this through. So
you've been out there really doing your homework in terms of, all the things that if you are going to try to go mainstream, you've just really put the energy out there to make that happen. And I know you connected with a really good agency, so that's congratulations on that. And then you can always fall back on self-publishing if for any reason it doesn't work out, right?
Yeah.
Which is changing as we speak. And I actually had a client who got an agent, landed an agent, and then as the agent's out there trying to sell it, she's going like, now wait a minute, I got the agent a year ago and self-publishing looks pretty good to me now, and like, why not? So there's so many options out there. But we're looking forward to your book. This sounds fabulous. It sounds like you're thinking big, and you're going to really try to change the face of something huge on the globe.
I hope so. That's been the mission since day one, 10 years ago, so when it all became clear. So thank you very much.
You seem like somebody who sticks to the mission.
It's true. Thank you.
So we're going to, let me tell you about our guest next week as we end the show here. And next week we are going to have as our guest expert Dan Janelle. And he has a new book called Internet Marketing Confidential. And Dan has the website prleadsplus.com. He's really an expert in helping you get the word out there about your book. He's got his own book, and he doesn't live in LA, but he's going to be here and be in studio with us. Thanks to my great producer, Susan Levin, who snagged him. And we have Carol Orsborn coming on. She is a leader of the boomer generation. She has been on Oprah and the Today Show, and she has a book called Fierce with Age. She's really an expert in baby boomers and, aging and changing the face of aging. And we have Julie Simon on. She's got a new book called The Emotional Eater's Repair Manual, a practical mind-body spirit guide for putting an end to overeating and dieting. So I bet you didn't know there was a repair manual if you mess up on your diet. So, and it's published by New World Library, who, by the way, is a wonderful publisher up north. So anyway, tune in next week for the Book Beat. Look forward to seeing you there with us. And this is LA Talk Live, where we're more than just talk.
are now tuned into LA Talk Live. We're more than just talk. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned.